and just skip the grieving process and see a wonderful life healing coach that just makes that
It's
part go away, but it's not possible.
one of the things that kind of helped me was when I was learning about a lot of the still tribal cultures that still exist. And like I was doing this one paper, this was before my spiritual path. I was doing this paper and we were doing this thing on Aboriginal tribes. And it was so profound the way that they handled death. They had like this 2 week fucking celebration. You know what I mean? It was like this
Mhm.
good morning, Tucker. It was this celebration that they were having. Doesn't matter how the person died, doesn't matter if it was tragic, doesn't matter if it was old age, doesn't matter how they passed, but they celebrated, they cooked, they danced, they cheered for this person because they understand the process of death. And I think that's what we were robbed of. We were robbed in our society of the process of death. We don't understand it, we don't accept it. We kind
Mm-mm.
of walk around life thinking that no one will ever die, and then when we go through these moments, it's like, how the fuck do I process this? How do I go through this? How do I get through this moment? But what was amazing just to see about them is the way that they treated death, as just they treated death just like the celebration of life. And for me that was heartwarming, because we treat death as the most saddest shit ever in life, right? Like that's the
Mhm.
worst thing that can happen to you, right? And I would tell people that's probably not the worst thing. The worst thing is you fucking living and being disabled through some shit and some other crazy shit happening, right? But we think death is like the epitome of the saddest shit ever. But when I looked at that, just the way that they celebrating death just along with life and this person being reborn into the spirit world, changed something in me. You know what I mean? And even though it didn't really hit me at that time, because of course I wasn't on my spiritual path, it stays with me. It stays with me. And that
Yeah.
has helped me in my grieving process, because, going through everything I went through on my daughter is the same way, just like that, trying to get to a point of just accepting what happened was hard as fuck.
I think the biggest mistake I made with death, maybe it's not the biggest mistake because it led me here, right? But in some ways, it was the biggest mistake that I made with death was looking to the spiritual community for answers. Because I had
Mm,
one reader, one medium who told me my son was okay and he was happy and he was seeing us and blah, blah, blah. And then I'd have another reader who told me he's in a dark place and he can't get out and you got to light candles. And then I had another reader tell me, he's okay. And then another reader, like, oh, he's angry. And so that's where I think I was affected the most, is putting my faith in, I don't want to say people who weren't competent to do things,
right, right.
but putting my
Yeah,
faith in that way, because it's hard for me to celebrate somebody that I don't know is at peace. Like, especially your child. You're the mom,
right,
you want to fix everything possible, right? So I think in some ways we have to be careful with the community that we turn to, because
right,
at the
right.
end of the day, the only thing that brings me some kind of okayness with that is that I don't care how good you are. None of us have died and remembered what happened, where we went, who was there, how we got there. Did we walk to the light? Did we walk through a tunnel? Did an angel come and pick us up and put us on their back and fly us up there? Nobody knows what really, really, really happens in detail. And so I think we have to be careful, because a lot of times we turn to the spiritual community for every possible answer.
Right,
And
right. I
sometimes you get mixed answers or mixed emotions, and it can mess with you, especially when it comes to
it
certain
can.
subjects.
Yeah. I do. We see it a lot, and I feel like everyone's experience is different, and
Hmm.
so what one medium feels or sees death or the process, you know what I mean, is so different from someone else's. Just like I've studied under a lot of the great mediums, which all talk about there is no like they're not in a bad place, they're all good. And it's like, no, I've actually experienced so different when tapping into someone's, you
Mhm.
know, love coming through, where I've seen the darker side of shit, where no, not everything is nice. It hasn't all been nice. Not everybody is just chilling in, you know, these bubbly places and, you know, just having fun. Because I do feel, I believe in this is all a theory, right? It's all a fucking theory of what we're talking about. We're saying it really goes down to what your heart and what you believe. But I do believe our reality here shapes our reality when we leave. So I believe, like, if you feel you're going to hell, I believe that you will go to a space of hell because you've created it. I don't think it's any different, just like we create our realities here. If my mind and my perception says this, that's the life I'm going to live, right? I believe it's the same way when you cross over. I believe that's just kind of how I see it. And that's because I've worked with my own father who was coming to me who was stuck. And that's my experience. I'm not saying everybody's experience
Mhm.
is going to, but my experience showed me that my dad was stuck. Almost 10 years later, you know, he was still fucking stuck. He was still sad. He was still hurting. He wasn't okay. You know, and he came to me when I really got into my path, and I helped him transition through that with a lot of the healing. And I do, and one of the things that I remember about my dad is he was raised Catholic. He believed that he was going to go to hell. He believed that, you know what I mean, that all of his sins would catch up with
Mhm.
him, that wholeheartedly. And so I do believe he went to his own space of hell when he passed on, you know? So I believe our perception is a very big thing. And this is why so many people have different experiences when, you know, when they go through, and people who have talked about their near death experiences and things. This is why it's so different, because everyone
Mhm.
has their own perception. But I do believe what you believe in is what it is. That's why I don't believe in heaven or hell. I don't believe in either one.
Right. Penny, I
I
don't
don't.
think maybe you've had a near death experience. I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. You didn't, you seen the doorway, but did you cross the doorway and did you stay there? Did you go through the process of staying dead? I guess is the, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that
Right.
people haven't gone through near death experience, but everybody's near death experience has been different, or death experience. Say they've died, they've actually been considered dead. But
Right.
what is the actual process once you
Right.
actually cross and stay?
Right.
Nobody
I think
knows
it, I
that
think
unless
it's,
you're there.
yeah. Because even when I did my past life regression, I didn't see that part. Spirit didn't show me that part. You know what I mean? I kind of jumped in pieces, and I can tell you
And
the
I don't
past
think
life
we're
that I
meant to
saw.
remember that. You know what I mean? Because if
I
we
don't think
did,
we're,
then we would
yeah,
get here and redo our life and we would be okay. And
right,
we'd
right,
all know what was going to happen and we'd all be, because there is a part of us as humans that needs to, I don't want to say learn to be okay with that, but there is that learning process as humans that have
it
to
is,
deal with that. And if we all
right,
knew that it was fucking peaches and cream over there, we'd be like, fuck it, it's okay. Take me now. We wouldn't give a shit. You know what I mean? So that's just what I mean. And I think a lot of times
right,
I'm kind of still worried about it, but I just think a lot of times we have this picture in our head, right? And that
right,
has to be the way it is. And my thing is I don't have a picture in my head, right? So I'm really worried about what the process is. And as a mom who's had a child who passed, and you don't have, and I don't think religion, for me, I'm not a religion person, but that's the one thing I can say about certain religions that I think people find comfort in is that this is what they believe is going to happen. And so it makes it a
right,
little bit easier to go through that process, unless you think you're going to
right,
hell. If you believe in heaven and in hell, then I think you're scared
right,
shitless, right? But there are some religions who believe that you automatically
right,
transition over. It just depends on what level you transition to.
right,
But if
right,
you have no idea, if you have no clue, if you have no thoughts on what that place is, that can be a very scary thing to even wonder if
right,
it exists. Like, am I just going to be gone and
right.
not know I'm gone? Like, I fall asleep and I just never wake up and don't even know? Or,
Do you think that maybe that's still part of it, the not knowing, the
oh,
not
yeah.
having that?
Oh, yeah. I think that's and that's why I said the spiritual part. when I went to psychics or when I went to mediums, made it even worse because that just fed on my fear. That
Right,
fed on
right,
my fear of what is actually over there and what is my child going through.
right, right,
But some people are like, oh, he was met by your grandma and your grandpa and this other lady, and God, Jesus, Allah, Buddha all came and sung a fucking song, and the choir came out and blah. And then you have other people who are like, oh, he hasn't found her yet. He's lost.
mm,
And that, when you don't know your own beliefs or you don't know what to believe yourself, you're like, oh,
right,
fuck. Oh,
right,
fuck.
right,
Then you start thinking all these movies and shit where you gotta like find the dead man and bring him to the dark and bring him to the light, or it's just like it's a scary process. It's a scary process, and that's why I think when I went to the spiritual community and people started saying different things, it made that anxiety even worse.
right, right, right. Yeah. I think you do have to I do feel like we all have to get some type of concept of death and what it is for us, and that transition or where you go, you know what I mean, and get that connection, because otherwise you are left. And I don't think we're ever going to get all the answers that we want. Even if you watch some of the greatest mediums, what are their messages? They're never telling them, like, yeah, this is the spirit world. They just give messages from the person, not necessarily what's going on behind the
Mm-hmm.
closed doors of that, right? Because I don't think we're supposed to know that.
Mm-mm. I think if we did, it would be too easy on that to do the human path. You know what I mean?
Right,
Nobody would be
right,
afraid of death. Nobody would be afraid of taking their lives. Nobody would be afraid of doing stupid shit that we put ourselves at risk in. Nobody,
right.
we'd all be fighting the gunmen with our bare hands. Like, go for it. Like, take me now.
Well,
So,
yeah, because I went through decades of being afraid of people dying, afraid of my family dying,
mhm.
and not having that comfort of death.
And
And that's why the way we practice it, the way we are raised to believe and feel about death, it's a very gruesome and sad.
right.
Instead of like some like tribes and stuff that still look at it and they celebrate death just like they celebrate life. They celebrate it the same. There is no difference. It's even as sad as it is to let someone go.
Hmm.
um I remember this one thing, even though I didn't agree with it at the time. This one guy had told me when I was first starting to talk about my daughter's death in 2018, which when I was starting to get on I needed to heal path. I remember him saying, you think your daughter is yours. And he was a very religious person.
Hmm.
And that kind of stumped me, like, what you mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yes, she's mine.
Yeah, she's mine.
You
Like,
know? He was like, no, you think of your daughter as a possession, like she was yours to keep. And I was just like, it blew me away. I was pissed in the moment. I ain't gonna lie. I was fucking
right.
pissed in the moment. Like, who are you? Like, what do you mean? Yes, yes, I felt like she was mine. Yes, I'm angry because my child is not here no more. And yes, I'm angry that I didn't get those years with her. Yes, I'm angry that I went through 9 months of fucking birth only to have her a couple weeks and then she fucking passed. Yes, I'm still angry, and I was just like mad. And I remember him just calmly like looking like, that's the problem. You think she was yours to keep. You don't appreciate the time that she was here. And it hit me a certain way. Even though I was fucking pissed off and mad, it fucking triggered me. Triggered me. And I was just like, damn, we look at everything as possessions. They are
Hmm.
ours. And we're so mad, but we're not guaranteed. We are not fucking guaranteed the time that we think we are with anyone, not our children, not our families, not our friends. And it's a harsh reality, but it's so fucking real. And that is one of the only things that has helped me get to where I'm at far as dealing with the grief and having to let that go.
Hmm.
And because there was so long of me not wanting to let that go, like, no, fuck that. I've sat and watched shittier mothers keep their children. But again, that's going to comparison of someone's life and saying, you know what I mean? It's